Venerable to everyone. Good to be with you today. We'll start with the four great vows. Join palms. Vow. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless vexations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. Today we're going to talk about the Avatamsaka Sutra and a specific part of the Avatamsaka Sutra. In Chinese, it's the Huayan Jin, and in English, it's the Flower Adornment Sutra. It's a very long sutra, and we're going to be putting our attention on the last chapter, chapter 40 of the sutra. This comes after Sudana had sought advice from 53 well-known advisors, and had finally was confirmed by Maitreya Milafo that he had attained enlightenment. And in that whole process, there was an incredible amount of descriptions of Buddha worlds. The term that you'll hear in this particular part of the sutra is ineffable. Ineffable means that it's beyond any possible description. So inconceivable, but it's ineffable in that it cannot even be talked about in a satisfactory way. So you will see that there are quite a bit of references to time and numbers that are beyond our ability to comprehend. It's therefore a reason for us to be able to break the dependence of time and space measured by samsara or by this world, and beginning to allow one to contemplate how vast mind is by presenting it with scenarios that are truly impossible to comprehend within the context of the samsaric world. So if we said, well, I want to be a millionaire, you would go, oh, I can understand that. A millionaire, actually a millionaire now isn't as big as it was in the 1950s. But a billionaire, then you still have an idea that that's a big number, but you've seen it before. But if we said that if every sand of the Ganges River was a Ganges River, and all those sands constituted $1 billion, then it's very, very difficult for us to understand how much of a value that is. And even if we have something like this in terms of a value, it's irrelevant within the scope of beyond samsara. Samsara, if you went and you wanted to deposit a check in a bank, and when you deposited the check in the bank, the check is for the amount of 1 billion times all the sands of all Ganges rivers. They would not be able to handle that. It would be on their comprehension. It is in this way the Avatamsaka Sutra presents the Dharma, so that one is not fixated on anything conceptual or conceivable, but it goes beyond that. But it doesn't do that in a way in which it abandons samsara. In fact, it's there for the benefit of all of those in samsara, not just human realm, but all realms, and you'll see it's very inclusive. And you will find that there's so many Buddhas. This is an important aspect of us understanding how great the vow of Samatabhadra is. So Samatabhadra in Chinese, the name is Pushen Pusa, and he is a Mahasava, meaning not just a Bodhisattva, but a Mahasava, a great Bodhisattva like Avalokiteshvara or Guanyin Pusa are great Bodhisattvas. These Bodhisattvas eschew becoming completely enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. So they push that away, and you'll see this in this sutra that there's a deferment of that and a conscious deferment of that for the sake of all sentient beings. Just like the vows that we said right now, I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. Innumerable mean that you cannot count them, you know. And finally, it says, I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood, but it is after the first vow. The first vow has to be completed, which is the delivering all of the sentient beings. That is job one or priority one. It is not us trying to get through. Now, for the novice and people that really haven't been exposed to this great compassion practice, they believe that the goal is to become enlightened. And people go to the retreats and they want to become enlightened. It isn't that one becomes enlightened. One is able to see into the true nature of mind. Once one sees into the true nature of mind, there's not so much of an interest to become enlightened, because exactly where would one become enlightened to, or what would someone become enlightened to? It doesn't matter. It isn't in this way. The enlightenment is understanding that everything is mind. Everything is created by mind. All phenomena, and if you remember last week, we were talking about the sutra of distinguishing phenomena from its intrinsic nature, that we don't create a duality there. We don't even create a one. It tends towards suchness. And there was this turning of the Dharma wheel, where the initial presentation, the turning of the Dharma wheel, was a presentation of the Four Noble Truths. And later it was the idea that all of these things were fundamentally empty into, and here's where there's, depending on what school you follow and what doctrine you follow, it can split in different ways. But essentially, in terms of the way I see it, was that there was a development in terms of the true nature of things, or the suchness. This is called the three natures of things, where one is a conventional understanding, the other one is this metaphysical understanding of emptiness, and the third is beyond this emptiness into Buddha nature itself. They're not inconsistent, emptiness and Buddha nature. It is just simply a further examination or exploration of what Buddha nature is, that we call the perfection of wisdom. From this perfection of wisdom comes great compassion. So you'll see this woven into the Huayan Jing, or the Flower Adornment Sutra, in this chapter 40. It's almost like a reprise, or the final part in a symphony, where everything is playing and mixing in there and saying, voila, here it is. This is what our practice is. We don't practice to reach nirvana. We practice knowing that one could move towards nirvana, but we don't move towards nirvana. We come back. And so you'll see this in these incredibly great 10 vows. So we'll start now. And again, it's too much for me to read it verbatim, so I have to give you a taste of it. Now, the sutra chapter is referred to as the Universal Worthies, Conduct and Vows. So Universal Worthy is another name for Samatabhadra. Okay, and I'll just give you a little bit of a start here from the beginning. It says, at that time, universal worthy Bodhisattva Mahasava, having praised the thus come one's merit and virtue, told the Bodhisattvas and good wealth, good men, if all the Buddhas in the 10 directions spoke continuously of the thus come one's merit and virtue for kalpas, as many as fine motes of for kalpas, as many as fine motes of dust in ineffable numbers of Buddha lands. So here they're saying countless Buddha lands. Sometimes they'll say it as countless Buddha lands, but I like the term ineffable here because it's beyond the idea of countless. Countless says, oh, well, we just give up. No, ineffable is an invitation for one to look beyond counting into mind itself. There is a directing the mind towards the inconceivable. And this is very, very important. When we simply are directing the mind as countless, then it stops. Boom, it's over. But when it's ineffable, then we have to look at it not with conceptual mind, but something else. We don't know what that is. We can't know what it is, but we know it's there. They're pointing to it and they're saying, what's that there? This ineffable worlds. It's beyond your samsaric ability to do it. You just don't have enough fingers and toes to count that far. And it's so large of a number, it's no longer a number. This is very important. It is empty. And so it's very, very interesting when we look at it in this way. Sometimes people will send me things and say everything is zero. And zero isn't the zero of the conventional math. Zero was created in many different cultures. I'm not going to say which one did, or I'll have a war of culture saying that they were the first ones. But the Mayans had it, and other cultures had it too. This idea of a zero, it wasn't a zero of lack of something, but it was the totality, this middle ground between is and is not. And it's very important because this is where we practice from, is this middle ground that's there, and it's straddling the idea of conceptual samsara to the inconceivable absolute. I have to present all of this to you so that you have your proper how would you say, a preparation to be able to listen to this, so that you're not stopping at the sound hearer level or the Shravaka level or even the metaphysical level where we say everything is empty, everything's empty, empty. To no, there's something there. It's Buddha nature. Well, is it a thing? No, it's not a thing. It's something more. It is what powers these vows. It's very important that we understand that. This is the esoteric. This is what cannot be spoken of. Even though I'm speaking of it, I'm simply presenting an invitation for you to contemplate this. This is very important. This is really the profound, profound wisdom that produces compassion. Okay, so we continue. And it says, that the thus comes merit and virtue for kalpas, as many as fine motes of dust in the ineffable numbers of Buddha lands. They're not even saying Buddhas, they're saying Buddha land. So how many Buddhas and how many sentient beings are in just one Buddha land? And so it says, those virtues could not fully be described. Those wishing to perfect the doors of this merit and virtue should contemplate the 10 vast and great conduct and vows. So there he's referring to these 10 vows and saying that one needs to cultivate these vows. And then he mentions what are the 10, and we'll go through them. So I'm not going to take the time to list each one because we're going to go through them individually. And so that this Bodhisattva Goodwill then says, great sage, what does it mean to worship and respect all the Buddhas up to and including the universally transfer of merit and virtue? So he's referring to all of these 10 great vows collectively and saying, what does it mean to worship these? What does it mean to practice these? So then that gives him the chance to be able to explain. So the first vow that he's going to talk about is to worship and respect all Buddhas. And we have to think, what does that mean, to worship and respect all Buddhas? And how does one worship and respect all Buddhas? We have an altar. We burn incense. We offer gifts. We offer water. We offer fruits and sometimes even vegetables to place it on the altar in terms of giving. This is one way. This is probably our most rudimentary samsaric way of doing it, but nevertheless, it's still a way to do it. So let's see what Samatabhadra says is to worship and respect the Buddhas. So again, when he refers to this universal worthy, it's Samatabhadra. So universal worthy Bodhisattva told good wealth, good man, to worship and respect all the Buddhas is explained like this. All Buddhas, world-honored ones, as numerous as fine motes of dust in all Buddha lands, in all 10 directions, and all 3 periods of time. So he's saying in wherever they could be found in the periods of time from the past, present, and future. So there's no distinguishing between the 3 of them. And this is something that's there, which was often repeated in the refutation of space and time by Nagarjuna, saying that it isn't in this way. Mind cannot be divided between the past, present, future, or this point here, or another point, as reflected by the Prajnaparamita Sutra, including the 700 line one all the way up to 100,000 line one, that the Manjusri Wenshupusa is abiding in non-abiding. There's no difference. There's no specific locale that one is there or one is practicing or one has a bodhimanda. A bodhimanda, a place of practice, is not a place in your house where you put a cushion down and practice. When you do that, it's fine. But when you practice the entire Buddha Dharma realm, which isn't really a realm, it's everything, the suchness, is your bodhimanda, your place of practice. So he's referring to this in terms of saying this and saying to the exhaustion of the Dharma realm and empty space. So imagine exhausting the Dharma realm, all the Dharma realm, wherever you go, there's not even no phenomena appearing, but nevertheless, mind is still there. Because of the power of universal worthy bodhisattvas' conduct and vows, I have a mind of deep faith and understanding of them as if they were before my eyes. So it's very interesting. So here he comes back with an analogy that you can understand, which is an anthropomorphized version of it saying before my eyes, but it isn't the eyes with subject and object. It is the Buddha eye, which includes everything. There's no place those eyes are not. With my body, mouth, and mind, karma completely pure. And this is a refrain in this that's very important, where they refer to what I call body, speech, and mind. And this is something very important. This is a key to the practice, is body, speech, and mind. What are you thinking? What is arising in the mind in that moment, in 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 thought patterns? What are you saying? And what are you doing? The mind has to be in harmony with all of that. I mean, we'll find out in another of the vows how much it has to be harmonized. But here, what it's doing is it's delivering you something esoteric that you cannot grasp onto, and it's telling you how to use it. That's pretty good. It's saying you cannot name it, but this is how it is used through body, speech, and mind. And every single moment is a Buddha present moment that gives rise to the practice. This is the true practice. Not only does this give rise to wisdom, but it gives rise to compassion. So you see, all these sutras are interlaced. It's very, very incredible. So it says, I constantly worship and respect them. You always have the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas in mind. And it's reflected in what you do when you're encountering sentient beings. You do not see them as differentiated or discriminated against. No, sometimes people will discriminate and they'll say, oh, this one has a robe, so his wisdom and virtue must be very, very high. And this one does not have a robe, so he's not so good. This kind of a discrimination was from the old days. Of course, we understand and we respect the Sangha, but we too are also the Sangha. We too are also practitioners, especially in the Mahayana practice. And so we see, we don't discriminate at all. We see all sentient beings as people that are worthy of our time or our patience and our practice. In each and every place where there are Buddhas, I manifest bodies as numerous as the fine motes of dust in ineffable numbers of Buddha lands. Each and every body everywhere worships and respects Buddhas, as many as and it goes again into these uncountable numbers. When they and I'm as you get used to this, I'm going to kind of fast forward through those so we can get to the meatier part of that. And it says, when the realm of empty space is exhausted, my worship and respect will be exhausted. But because the realm of empty space is inexhaustible, my worship and respect will never end. In the same way, when the realms of living beings, the karma of living beings will never end. The karma of living beings and the afflictions of living beings are exhausted. My worship and respect will be exhausted. But the realms of those living beings is never exhausted. And the afflictions of living beings are inexhaustible. Therefore, my worship and respect are inexhaustible. And this term inexhaustible is very important because then it ties into the right effort from the paramitas. And so when we see things in this way, the virya, the right effort, is very important because it is what drives us to practice harder, to not regress, but to push harder and harder. As you begin to push harder and study more, it becomes very incredible. The Buddha's sutras the treatises they open up as actually one of the people that was a translator of this particular version of the Vatamsaka Sutra was saying it's like a hologram, and one looks beyond the words, and one goes into seeing it and realizing it in a way that cannot be realized in samsara. The restrictions, physical restrictions, time restrictions, material restrictions within this world of samsara are suspended. And in that moment, it allows the mind to be unshackled. It's free, it's liberated from this world. We think that this world is real. We don't understand it's a prison. It keeps us locked in. We are locked in by our own ignorance, because there isn't a lock on the door. Anytime we want to, we can get up and walk out of the room. But we can't see it that way. It was this way that when I had a conference with Master Sheng, I won't go into all the details, but he had asked me, how is my practice going in a retreat? And I said, this is a joke. And he said, well, I said, this is a fraud. This is ridiculous. It's so incredibly humorous. And he says, what do you mean? And I said, you tell me, who's reciting the Buddha's name? Once we understand that this person that's reciting the Buddha's name is like a cartoon character, and that cartoon character actually is driven by mind itself, the mind can instantly be liberated, because it is not that cartoon character. It is not the one that is trapping itself. It's so ridiculous that we trap ourselves in samsara. We don't understand that. And many years ago, I equated it to what they call the Chinese finger trap, which I've gone to China and I've gone to Taiwan and other Asian countries. I've never seen a finger trap. So I think that was a device of some carnival or something, but it was a bamboo like tube that if you put your fingers into it and you tried to pull them out, you can't pull them out, because the force keeps you in there, and your ignorance of not understanding that you cannot use force to get out traps you there. And so you can be there all day until somebody says, if you don't put force, the fingers will naturally come out. This is the practice. It's very, very simple. That's why I was laughing at that moment, because I realized how ridiculous I was. I'm sitting there. I want to get enlightened. I want to get enlightened. I want this. I want that. What I say to people sometimes, I want to see colors. I want to see light. I want to see something that a payoff, like you're playing some cheap slot machine, that's not paying off, but you're getting frustrated. You want to do it and you think it's going to happen, and you just keep moving farther and farther away. But when you just put it all down, it's right there. Right at the palm of your hand is this liberation. It's very amazing. This is what these vows are doing, is they're saying, look, you practice this way, it's liberation. But the payoff of this is that you don't leave samsara, you come back. You work on creating a pure land here. It would be horrible, you see the movie The Titanic. It must be a long time ago, but I think most people remember it. And there were people on the ships that were moving away from the people that were freezing, thinking they're going to tip over the boat. And so they just let the people freeze. We don't do that. That's not the practice. That was Mahayana changed the course. It was a turning of the wheel that said this Buddha nature is more than just trying to escape to nirvana. Nirvana is real and not real, just the same way as samsara is real and not real. When we straddle the two, the truth is self-evident. Okay, we continue on. I can see I'm not going to finish these today, but I think it's not necessarily bad. The second vow, to praise the thus come ones. Moreover, good man, to praise the thus come ones is explained like this. In each fine mote of dust throughout the lion's chin direction, and he goes into uncountables, right? There are Buddhas as numerous as fine motes of dust in all worlds. So can you imagine if there's Buddhas like fine motes? How many fine motes of dust are there in this world? But Buddhas in all these worlds, there's Buddhas. How big of a number that is. And it says, each of these Buddhas is circumnambulated by an ocean-wide assembly of bodhisattvas. Picture this. Circumnambulated is going around them, like moving around them like that. You have to picture this. This is when it becomes a hologram. That all of these countless Buddhas are circumnambulated by bodhisattvas. How many bodhisattvas is that? And Shifu used to say that everything revolves around the hub of the Buddha. So the hub, if you picture like an old wagon wheel, the wheel appears to be moving, but in the middle, there's no movement. But all the spokes are connected to the Buddha. And it is the foundation of everything. And by its virtue of remaining still in one place, it enables the movement around it. And so we see that as the movement of the bodhisattvas. The bodhisattvas are apparent because there are sentient beings that require attention. If there are no sentient beings that require attention, the bodhisattvas would not be there, nor would there be the idea of a Buddha. So this is how you read a sutra. You try to feel it. With my profound and supreme understanding, I know and I see them all. Imagine that. And not just see a Buddha, but all the Buddhas, countless of fine motes of dust in the Buddha worlds, not just one world, but worlds. And seeing all the bodhisattvas circumambulating around them. How can you see that? You cannot see that, but mind can. You see what's so wonderful in the Huayan Jing is that it just takes away the table, it takes away the chair, it takes away the floor, it even takes away falling. It gives you nothing to support this in samsara. So that enables for you to experience the weightlessness of mind, the liberation of mind in this way. This is how you investigate a sutra. And then it says, with my profound and supreme understanding, I know I see them all. Each of my bodies brings forth a tongue of subtle and wonderful eloquence, surpassing the skillful speech of even Saravati, the goddess of eloquence. And Saravati was like a Dharma protector, but very, very eloquent. And so she was in some cosmology, she's a consort of Wenshu-Pusa, the Manjusri, and not a consort like you see in these uh, Chinese soap operas, but a consort as someone connected with them. And so it's interesting. Like Wenshu-Pusa may be a consort of of Amitabha Buddha or Shakyamuni Buddha um, in that way. So they're all connected, and it's saying this ability to have an eloquence, to be able to transmit the Dharma. Again, it's not teach the Dharma, but transmit the Dharma. You're all taken like in a bubble to perceive from the perception of Avalokitesvara. This sutra right now, we're in this bubble, and it's by my eloquence that enables me to do that. If my eloquence was better, you'd be able to see more, but you got me, so I can take you as far as I can, but I'll vow to practice better. But this is what we're doing here. Okay. Each tongue brings forth an inexhaustible sea of sounds. Each sound emits an ocean of all words, praising and glorifying the thus come ones, a sea of all merit and virtue. These praises continue without cease to the end of the boundaries of the future, exhausting the Dharma realm. Think about exhausting the Dharma realm, exhausting all appearances, exhausting anything that's arising. Even that eloquence will continue. These sounds reach everywhere. When the realm of the empty space is exhausted, when the realms of living beings are exhausted, and the karma of living beings and afflictions are exhausted, only then my praise will be exhausted. But just as the realm of empty space, up to including the living beings' afflictions, are endless, so too are my praises endless. They continue in thought after thought without cease. My mouth, body, and mind never tire of doing these deeds. Sometimes people ask me and they say, Gilbert, how can you do this? You're always writing this, you're always talking here, you're always doing that. I don't get exhausted because the the mind has the right virya, the right effort, and the right focus and the interest. No, I don't do this because I like talking. I do this because I want to transmit the Dharma to all of you. Again, not teach, to transmit it. How are we transmitting? An invitation for you to be able to understand. First, I teach you the tunes and the notes and the scale, and then you can sit to try to play. Sometimes you play well, sometimes you don't play so well, but it's okay. It's inexhaustible. You have to practice and understand and have faith, and it will work. And we praise the Buddhas, and in our praise, as we'll find out later, we are inviting them to to stay here, to help us, to support us in this. And we understand that their appearance in all of the countless Dharma realms are for that purpose, not for the purpose that they are here vacationing. This is not a great place to vacation, in case you didn't notice. But they're here for a purpose, to enable people to have faith to be able to transcend the idea of this world as being permanently real. So we get to the third vow, and that's to extensively cultivate the giving of offers. And this is wonderful because, I think this is one that really opened a door for me from on the paramitas and the link between the paramitas and the Mahaprajna Paramita Sutra, that how we practice and how we extend generosity. Of course, there's a generosity in this world that we offer, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a generosity there of spreading the Dharma. So let's see how valuable that generosity is. So it's saying that if you extensively cultivate the offerings like this, and then it talks about, in every mode of dust in the Buddha lands, throughout the 10 directions, etc., and exhausting the Dharma realm, there are Buddhas as many as fine motes of dust in all worlds. Each Buddha is circumambulated by various kinds of assemblies of bodhisattvas with the power of universal worthies practiced and vows. I am able to deeply believe in and understand them. So here they're talking about this I, which is actually the listener, you, and saying that you are able to understand this, and you understand what is important, what is important to give. With the power of universal worthies, I already got that part. To each I make offerings of superb and wonderful gifts. That is to say, clouds of flowers, clouds of garland, clouds of heavenly gifts. That is to say, clouds of flowers, clouds of garlands, clouds of heavenly gifts, clouds of divine canopies of flowers, garlands, heavenly gifts, clouds of divine canopies, fragrances, balms, burning incense, powdered incense, and clouds of gifts such as these, each cloud as large as Mount Sumeru. I will burn all kinds of lamps, and it mentions many different lamps. And the wick, the part that burns, of each lamp is as tall as Mount Sumeru. The quantity of oil in each lamp is equal to the volume of the waters of the great seas. With all manner of gifts such as these, I constantly make offerings. So how great would those offerings be, right? Good people of all the offerings, the gift of the Dharma is the supreme. That is to say, the offering of cultivating according to the teachings, the offering of benefiting all sentient beings, the offering in which gathers in all sentient beings, the offerings of standing in for all sentient beings to undergo their suffering. The offering of diligently cultivating good roots, the offering of not forsaking the deeds of a bodhisattva, and the offering of non-renouncing the Buddha mind. All of these things are practices that we should practice in this way. We don't give up and say, I don't understand, I'll pick it up next lifetime or whatever. No, we don't do that. We persevere. We use the proper virya from the paramitas to keep us moving. And we understand, and this is the important part, that most people, they really don't understand this. But if you understand it, you will practice this the most. Is that when you practice this kind of a dana, this kind of an offering, it's insurpassable. It's inconceivable the nature of the benefit that it gives. So they say the immeasurable merit and virtue created by making those offerings when compared to the merit and virtue of a single thought of an offer of Dharma does not equal 1 part in 100, 1 part in 1,000, 1 part in 100,000 kotis of nayutas, 1 part in a kala, 1 part by reckoning, 1 part by calculation, 1 part cannot be demonstrated by comparison, 1 part of an Upanishad. None of them measure up to a single part. So none of those, no matter how big it was, and when you're talking about a koti of nayutas, nayuta, that term means a myriad, like uncountable amount, and koti means an uncountable amount. And you read, sometimes they'll say, oh, that's like a koti is 100 million, and an ayuta is like 5 billion. I don't know where they got the idea of the numbers. All we have to know is that it's an uncountable number. And saying if you gave these treasure chests, but yet they don't measure up to the benefit of spreading the Dharma. Why is this? Because all thus come ones honor the Dharma, cultivating according to the teachings gives birth to all Buddhas. So cultivating according to the teachings gives birth to all Buddhas. So does that mean that you are going to be born as a Buddha? It doesn't mean it in this way. What they're saying is that it enables the transcendence or the liberation of a person that's locked up in this cartoon cell, with the door open, they don't even realize it. But by the Dharma, presenting the Dharma, then one can lead these illusory characters in samsara to liberation. It will be the end of it for them as they see it as a prison cell, but they willingly go back into the prison cell to lead others out. So they say, if all bodhisattvas make the offering of Dharma, they perfect the making of offerings to all thus come ones. Cultivation in this manner is a true offering. I lost my place here. The true offerings to all thus come ones. Cultivation in this manner is a true offering, a vast, great, and most supreme offering. So we see things in this way, and we understand why we practice. We understand the benefit of it. We understand such a great value. And so we want others to benefit in this great value. When the realm of empty space is exhausted, when the realms of all living beings are exhausted, and again, it goes through all of the refrain there, then it says, so too are the making of my offerings endless, because it says, but all the afflictions are endless. So my offerings are endless in thought after thought without cease. My body, mouth, and mind never weary of those deeds. So then we get to the fourth one, to repent all karmic obstacles and reform. So this is kind of like a shaman repentance here, that we repent the obstacles, because we cannot understand oftentimes. The reason is because our minds are appear to be obstructed by karmic obstructions of ignorance. And sometimes we just don't have enough virya, the effort. We don't apply it in the right way. And so we grow tired, just like somebody who's going to a retreat and wants to become enlightened. I want to become enlightened. I want to become enlightened. After a while, they tire of that because it's not paying off for them. They don't understand that. But when you practice in a sincere way and in the true way, it pays off immediately. Immediately. You have to believe that. And if you do, you will find peace and tranquility on that cushion. So we have to understand these obstructions that we have. We have to understand the obstructions of all sentient beings. When I talk to people, I see people maybe in a different way than other people see them. I don't discriminate or differentiate. I'll see people and they have a lot of questions. Sometimes I see people and they have a lot of issues or what we call baggage that they're carrying around with them. Maybe a marriage gone sour, a relationship with a family gone sour, a boss or employee having problems, whatever it is in this life, that things accumulate. And they're even carrying around with them the flat tire from 5 years ago that they had, on the street that inconvenienced them, or a dog that bit them, or a person that lied about them, or whatever. And they carry this baggage with them wherever they go. But we don't see people in that way. We see them as promise. We see them as that if we can provide them with just a little bit of faith, a little bit of ability to transcend, and with the paramita of patience, we are able to set forth a course that eventually will lead to us delivering that sentient being. Maybe not in this lifetime, but we've got all the time in the world. But we have to keep moving it forward. We can't just simply lie in samsara and say nothing matters, so I'll just, sit here in this pool. And it doesn't work that way. So we understand that when we do our shame and repentance practice, it enables us to help others. Once one Qigong master I was practicing with, he said that before you put new wine in a barrel, you have to clean the barrel first. And this is exactly what we do, is we clean the barrel. So we don't just say, okay, I promise I'm going to be better, but you never really scour through the barrel and clean off the residue that was there, and to make it a perfect vessel for the reception of the Dharma. And as we begin to do that, then we understand how we can do that with others by demonstrating compassion to them, demonstrating care. You'll be surprised how much sometimes people are just waiting for somebody to listen to them, and then little by little then to guide them. But they have faith and trust when somebody stops to listen to them and not judge them. This is what the shame and repentance leads to. And so it says, I now completely purified the three karmas, and before the assemblies of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout the Dharma realm, in lands as many as fine motes of dust, I sincerely repent of and reform my offenses, and vow never to create them again. I will always dwell in all merit and virtue of the pure precepts. So it's saying that it is this dwelling in the precepts. The dwelling in the precepts, again, is dwelling in mind. There isn't any particular location. It's not saying, here, I'm going to do this, but with my friends, I may go out to have a drink or smoke some pot or whatever else, somebody's vices are. It isn't in this way. It is that one understands, that we have to keep the vessel pure in terms of it via our practice. And it's not trying to polish the pot or reform the ego. It is simply setting the proper environment for the practice. We're not trying to reform the ego. We're allowing the mind to settle and not let all of these obstructions interfere with the practice. And likewise, we pass that on to others. And then we get to the fifth one is to rejoice in the merits and virtue of others. And I think this one is incredibly wonderful. It's something that a long time ago in our political social climate, especially in California, and a long time ago I was more politically involved, and we had a story amongst Mexican Americans, and that there was a story where somebody was looking at a pot of crabs, and they were saying, what kind of crabs are there in that pot? And the one person looks at him and says, those are Mexican crabs. And he said, how do you know they're Mexican crabs? He says, because as soon as one gets to the top, the other ones try to pull them down. And this was our kind of a sadness of the political environment in politics, at least in California. When one person wanted to get up higher, then everybody else kind of pulled them down or caused problems. And likewise, when we practiced the Buddha Dharma, there's times when people will try to pull you down. I don't understand that. I honestly lament that, and I feel it's the height of ignorance. People will do that even though that they are they don't even know what they're saying, and they've never heard the person talk, but they just formulate an opinion of that, or they may formulate an opinion that this master or well-known advisor is paying too much attention to this one, and he's not really that good, and so they want to show him up. And this is so regrettable. If people make progress, I'll be the first one to indicate that they've made progress. If they don't get too excited about their progress, but I'm not necessarily a cookie mom in terms of you. No, if I give those kinds of compliments sparingly in order to push you further, but I will not insult you. I may insult your ego sometimes, but I will not intentionally insult you. I will encourage you, and I'm so happy. And more lately, I've been really rejoicing the progress that you make. Some of you are practicing so sincerely, and I rejoice that my goal is, may you stand on my shoulders and go further. There's nothing that I hold back from you, and if you have achieved some realizations, then I will give you the appropriate responses for that. No, I will not give you, some award or anything like that. It isn't in that way. You'll probably get from me, not yet, but that isn't necessarily bad to do that, because if you say, oh, you got this or you reach this level, sometimes people are always talking about, oh, forget about levels. Okay, please forget about levels. Forget about that you're at this level or that level or whatever. That's foolish nonsense. You don't need that. You just practice. There's no levels here. But if you practice well and you say something that makes sense, then I will agree with you. My job is, if there's some subtle differences in it, to help you, but in that helping, you should rejoice also, because that puts you closer to a better practice, a more perfected practice. So it's not necessarily bad. So I wanted to say that part first, and let's see what they say about this, because they're going to go into the 10 directions and everything again, as they always do. And let me get to the meaty part of it. Have diligently cultivated, accumulated of blessings without regard for their bodies and lives. They did this throughout kalpas, as many as the fine motes of dust in the ineffable Buddha lands. During such kalpas, they gave up their heads, eyes, hands, feet, as many times as there were dust motes in the ineffable Buddha lands. So he's saying there's some people, some bodhisattvas that practice in this way, and it's like them trying to get on a plane, and they go, oh, you're one of those known travelers, and you can go through this line here, the shortcut. And they go, no, I think I'll get to the back of the line, of the regular line, and go through again. But you can go, no, I don't need to do that. And they grow hands, they grow feet, they grow a head, a body, and they're back in samsara. The only difference is that they know why they're back, or they'll quickly realize why they're here. And so it is in this way that we give praise to those. It isn't like, oh, well, what happened to Sam? No relation to Sam. Oh, he moved on. What do you mean he moved on? Yeah, he became enlightened and left. He just said, so long, suckers, I'm out of here. That's not the way we do that. The heart will bring you back here. This is Mahayana. This is our practice. And so we rejoice in those merits. We rejoice that the Buddhas appear in the world, because they don't have to be here. The bodhisattvas don't have to be here. They do this by the function and from the heart to demonstrate this great compassion. All of this revolves around this great compassion. In this way, they cultivated all the difficult ascetic practices and perfected the gates of the various paramitas. You see, this is a demonstration that they're doing, and this is a perfection of the paramitas. We start again with wisdom, which leads to compassion, leads to dana, the great generosity. And so it says, I'm sorry, I lost my place. Up. So it says they enter and were certified to each bodhisattva grounds of wisdom and accomplish the unsurpassed bodhi of all Buddhas. Upon their parinirvana, their sharayas, this is relics, the Chinese know it as, if I say it right, shirlisis, were divided and distributed. I completely follow along with and rejoice in all of their good roots. Moreover, as for all of the different types of beings in the six paths and the four kinds of birth in every world in the 10 directions, I follow along with and rejoice in their merit and virtue, as well as even as small as a mote of dust. I completely follow along with and rejoice in the merit and virtue of all the sound hearers, pratyeka Buddhas, learners, those beyond study, in the 10 directions in the 3 periods of time, I follow along with and rejoice in the vast and great merit and virtue of all bodhisattvas who, in their quest for unsurpassed right and equal bodhi, cultivate measureless difficult ascetic practices. So it is that even if the realm of empty space is exhausted, and it goes into all of that again, it says that my body, speech, and mind will never weary of those deeds. So it is this way that we do that, and we apply that to the people around us. I don't say, sometimes I'm studying something and Senta will say, oh, she's studying the same thing. And I rejoice. I'm going, great, we're on the same page, or we're doing this, or she's studying something else. I don't say, oh, she's getting ahead of me. She should. When I see the people, I'm so happy, that they're in some kind of a study group and they're studying sincerely. I rejoice in that because I know what's going to follow. This is what was set into motion so that they can assist others. And if others get some accomplishment or whatever, great. We shouldn't make light of it or say, oh, or belittle them because they had done something. Sometimes people will do that. They'll say, oh, this person says they did that. That actually happened to me early on in my practice where I said something and the people thought that I was exaggerating and saying that wasn't possible. And then later on, Master Shen, he said, I believe you because that's the way I do it. And the thing was is that people were not rejoicing in this. They were condemning me and ridiculing me and making fun. And this is very pitiable. If they on their own achieve something, I'll rejoice in that. I won't hold it as a grudge. If they can go, that means that they've changed. That means that they've seen something that's important. So I want to show you that, one, on the high level of bodhisattvas practicing, we rejoice in that, but we rejoice in each and every one of us practicing in a good way. We practice hard, and that's the result of it. All of these 10 vows, and we only got halfway through it today, are very important. So we'll finish up with the other 5. And again, we'll return back to the Dharma Dharmata Vibhaga Sutra, the distinguishing phenomena from its intrinsic nature. But I think when we return to it, then you'll be in a better position to do that. That one is like I want to kind of come back to it little by little, rather than try to give you one big giant swallow. Some of you may not be able to swallow the entire Ganges River. But I hope by the time we finish it, you will be able to do that. So thank you very much. And I'll take questions. Amitabha. No questions. Yes, Sam. And there was no reference to you with that Sam one.
Absolutely, Gilbert. Absolutely. Amitofo as well. This was an excellent lecture. I'm sure most Dharma drums do. At Dharma Drum Chicago, though, we recite Samatabhadra's 10 Great Vows every Sunday. And I was very appreciative you broke these down, especially how you broke down the cultivating the giving of offerings. And I feel like it really made sense of how in the Diamond Sutra, they explain how it is infinitely more virtuous to make just a 4-line gatha of that sutra be known as compared to the worldly offerings of building stupas and flower offerings and such. But what I wanted to ask you was, Regarding the first vow of worshiping and respecting all Buddhas, respect is very transparent, but when it comes to worship in this sense, how do we do that without reinforcing a duality, or what would that practice or that vow look like from the other side or the absolute?
Your question is an excellent question. I mean, it's really excellent because it goes to, how do we straddle samsara and the absolute? And when we give praise, when we burn incense, um, there's a number of things that through that offering. It's not going through the mind; it's going through the heart. So when I burn the incense and take refuge and and do the four great vows, I'm very cognizant about that. There's not necessarily a Buddha that's sitting on my altar looking at me, but on the other hand, it isn't necessarily that there isn't a Buddha sitting on the altar and looking at me. There is an understanding that we offer this in the same way as these 10 great vows. You see, these 10 great vows are so incredibly deep. And when you say them, you're only when you say them like that at things, you're at the sound hearer level, and you're not really penetrating that deep, but you can. Now you can. Now you know what they're all about. Then you say them with sincerity, and you can get to the metaphysical level, and one day you will get to the esoteric, where it will become a hologram, and this hologram uh, will enable you to escape the idea of this world as being real and having a fixed physics to it and reality to it. It those realities and physics, like I say, physics, that you throw something up in the air and it falls down because it follows gravity. But there's more to it than that. And when we understand that that belongs to this world that was created in mind. So as we do this, we bring all that to the altar. All of that comes with us. And this sincerity that when we give the four great vows, I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. So that presupposes, that they're illusory, but it also, the part that I think is better is when we say the four great vows and we say, I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings of self nature.
Mm-hmm.
So self nature is very important because it's saying these sentient beings are the self nature of mind. And as we begin to practice it in a certain way, it's very important. I wish I had the time to explain to you. Today I was studying a lot of things, but there's one. I'll probably butcher the name. Sandi Nirmokana Sutra. Sandi Nirmokana Sutra. Do you know that one, Santa?
Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra.
Nirmochana?
Nirmochana.
Nirmochani. And this is an important sutra from the Yogacara school, but the sutra also straddles Madhyamaka as well. And so it's very, very important when we see this, because we begin to make the links in all these doctrines, these wonderful doctrines, and how they fit together, and how the three natures pop up into Yogacara. So there's a lot of things like that. As we begin to see it, the more we study, the more you'll find following the Buddhas in study, the more that when we make offerings, we bring that all to the altar with us. All of that's there. So it isn't that we say, why am I doing this? That's that statue is only made of plaster or wood or whatever, bronze. It it isn't in that way. It is what it represents, and we understand that, and it is our way of an expression of giving an offering. But that offering enables us to generate faith, and also to generate virya, this effort to practice harder. And it's very important, and not only just practicing, but it's like the right concentration, the right practice that we're doing. And so we don't lose sight of that. And by working in this way, it really it helps us. So don't be afraid. Don't think, oh, why am I doing this? Or why am I offering this to it? It isn't in that way. You will not find shirlisis in those statues. You won't find relics in the statues. Sometimes it's interesting too. The Tibetans always putting things in their statues. If you shake the statues, they have something in there. But it's not like a box of Cracker Jacks. Don't try to pop it open to see what the prize is. Just leave it alone. Anybody ever shake a statue and they hear some rattling? It's very interesting. Really? You're not following in the right crowds, I guess. But but in any case, yeah, some of them they have like noises in them, but it's okay. But we understand what those statues mean, and even in our practice, and sometimes the monastics will do countless recitations to statues, even countless recitations to bottled water. Anybody ever have bottled water like that? Nobody? Boy, where are you guys practicing? You go to places and they'll have a bottle of water that has been, they've recited some mantra 100,000 times. And we go, oh, that's a bunch of, baloney. But if you believe it and it's there, it's very interesting because it can be infused with things. It isn't necessarily a complete talisman, but there is an effort there that if you believe that this world is here and is created by the mind, then certainly somebody can infuse something in samsara with special powers. We don't understand that, but you'll be very surprised, that stuff works. And but we can't, unless you see that, you wouldn't know, but sometimes people have an ability or have an experience where something has happened that's out of the ordinary, and then they begin to have more faith in that. But thank you for the question, because that question really is about the difference between a sound hearer understanding of these, and from an esoteric side of truly believing and sincerely offering blessings and offering in this way. Because when we do this, then when we give offerings to others, it is in this unlimited way that we can give offerings to others. So yeah, thanks again.
Okay. Thank you, Gilbert. Amitabha.
Amitabha. Yes, go ahead, Bin. Is that how you say your name?
Yeah, that's right. Amitabha.
Amitabha.
Yeah, I would like to check to ask a question that in my practice, whether it is a normal experience, because for a few times I had when I sit, I felt like there is a switch, there is a click, there is a switch, and then it felt like I walked, like it felt like I'm into a room, like a music studio room, like a soundproof room. So yeah, it happened a few times. So I'm just not sure if it is a normal experience as one sit for a while, yeah, or when as one at the mind settles down, if it is normal.
Yeah, if you're sitting sincerely, there'll be times when you will have an experience. You really don't understand what that experience is initially, because it isn't a samsaric experience. It is something else, and that's when one enters into a samadhi state. Sometimes samadhi states are not productive when you try to block your mind from thoughts, and then you're able to do that, but you block the mind by force. Then that's where you enter into a dark cave. That's not very good. That I don't think that that's what happened to you. uh, what happened to you, and the reason you cannot articulate it, is because you've never experienced that before, because it isn't of this world. It is a connection to mind of the samadhi state, that all of a sudden, sometimes I refer to it like a quick freeze on a winter night, where there's a blustery and everything, and all of a sudden everything just quickly freezes, and it's so clear. Once I remember I was up in the mountains, and it was uh, it was on a full moon. And so the moon was shining on everything, and everything was like illuminated with it, and kind of like a sparkly crystals, like a crystal world, very beautiful. But there was no wind, and it was quiet, quiet, quiet. And I use that to kind of equate to this kind of a samadhi that becomes very, very still. If you cling to that, then you'll mess it up. If you just stay in the state, but don't start separating yourself and looking at it and going, what is that? You know, this looks pretty good, you know, then you mess it up. You just remain there in that way. And if you can do that, it will be good. But if you can't, then you'll mess it up, and you'll kind of fall out of that. We could call it a state of grace, the state of quietness. But it's good. It's a good experience. As long as you don't hold on to it, and then you just do the things that brought you to that, and instead of seeking it, do the things that brought you there, and it'll come on its own nature. Okay, but it's a good experience, because it means that the mind is this is the stillness of the mind, the quietness of the mind. And even if it hears something, it is not clinging to those things. They too are quiet. They too are silent, just rising and falling, but they don't have any effect on the mind. The mind is just resting. So it's good. So just keep doing the things that got you there. Don't try to copy that, or you'll mess it all up. Okay?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Melanie, is that you?
Yes. More than a question, I wanted to say hello.
Oh, I can barely hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, get closer to the microphone.
Is that better?
It's better. I remember I can't hear very well, so you have to speak loud.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna have to just get really close on the side. But yeah, I haven't attended this lecture before because I used to live in Europe, so I just moved to Colombia. And just wanted to express my deep gratitude to the Sangha for when we had the blessing of encountering in person in the States. And yeah, just such a privilege to be able to actually connect and be able to sit here in person, um, and talking about the Samantabhadra vows, being near the Guanyin statue that has appeared in my home here in Colombia back in the day. So I'm excited to be back and to study, because I used to hear them in the YouTube but never be able to interact. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, well, hang around. I figured you were back in Colombia, so that's good. So, just come tune in, and you'll pick up a lot very quickly here. Again, people talk about these 10 great vows. It's kind of like the Heart Sutra, but my approach in doing these is to give you a feeling from the esoteric, from not from the samsaric side, but from the view of the absolute, and I think that helps a lot. So you'll see the difference in how I describe things. Okay, so good. Welcome back. Okay, Renee, go ahead.
Oh, hi. Thank you, Gilbert, for your lecture. I have two questions regarding my daily practice. So sometimes I use 话头, and now I'm asking who's dragging the dead corpse. But during I need listen to someone, just like listen to your class, your lecture. I use 直观. I don't know the English. Maybe direct intuition. So when
Does anybody know what she
Direct
said?
contemplation.
Direct contemplation. Okay, good. Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, so I use this two method. Just depends on the situation. When I'm just alone, I just continually use the 话头, who's dragging the dead corpse, but I need an interact with people, like listen or something else. I just use direct. Okay, but instead of focusing on fixed subjects, I just observe the entire environment, just open, totally open. And so do you think I use the two methods combined, it will cause some issue or?
No, it's very different. It's an interesting thing because they are interchangeable. If we use direct contemplation sometimes to follow a function, and but if we're directly contemplating, let's say, side illumination, then it is an overlay of mind onto the environment. But it is not, and this is very important, it is not unified mind. Unified mind is a sense that the mind expands onto everything, kind of like a vinyl that's applied to everything around you. You can't see it, but it's there. But it's not that way. The mind is more, when we do it right, it's like what was described by Lip Bin, that it is very quiet, it's very silent, it's crystal clear, but it's not attaching to anything. It's not even attaching to the unified mind, saying, oh, the unified mind's always kind of, the birds are chirping, everything is so clear or whatever, and there's somebody that's experiencing it. It's not in that way. When we directly contemplate, there is no sense of self. When we have an awareness of the mind, there's no sense of self. That there is simply the function of things, and if necessary, the mind can be directed. And I think this is very important when we talk about direct contemplation. It is the precursor or the beginning of understanding from the Dharma Dharmata Vibhaga of directing the mind. And so when the mind is directed, there is not you that directs the mind. The mind directs the mind. And if you do it this way, and Ben, if you do it this way, then you'll stay out of trouble with that. You won't go into unified mind. You just keep practicing in that way, and do it, Renee, just very naturally. If you feel it works, let it just go. And let it be whatever you're doing, as long as you're not creating illusions, then let the mind reveal itself. There's a difference when we do it in that way, and we we are letting the mind reveal, it's because you were not there that enables the mind to appear. When the ego is there, then the mind is obstructed, and it might be you're perfecting the ego, but you're not realizing mind. You're just making the ego a better citizen, and that's a difference. That's the lower level of practice. Okay, but if you practice, just keep playing with that. And let me know how you're doing. Okay. So normally when you get into something like that, I just let you play it the way you play it, and see how it works. Okay, good. Okay, Ben.
Hi, sorry, Amitabha. One question is, because what Renee asked, is that in my situation, would that be like an appropriate time when I feel my mind is clear and there is this click, I do the silent illumination? Is that an appropriate time?
Yeah. In the sun illumination, you'll feel it that way. If you're doing it correctly, you'll find that you'll get into a samadhi. I shouldn't say you, because then that really messes everything up. Mind is settling and resting. There's no idea of you getting anywhere. It's just the mind settling that enables the mind to experience this clarity and quietness. Okay. It is just that mind is looking into mind.
Okay.
And so it will work that way. Play with that and see how that goes. I think you'll be very surprised how fast you get into the samadhi.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, good. Anybody else? Nobody else? Okay. Okay. Well, anyway, then that'll be it. We'll go to the last five, and I think this was a good way to show you how to practice at a deeper level and a deeper understanding of the sutras and things such as the vows, and understanding and how it laces in with the paramitas, the six paramitas, and how the six paramitas lace into the Mahaprajna Paramita Sutra, and then how we see all of that is all connected. And when you do it in this way, essentially it's just simply showing you how mind reveals itself. You'll get it little by little. We're going a little deeper this year, so hang in there. You guys are doing good. So thank you very much.